Hey everybody, sorry for that little long intro screen there. I wanted to make sure this was working, but I think we're live now. Hi, low ego action heroes. It's Debbie Levitt from Delta CX, and welcome to today's live stream podcast in the Delta CX universe. Our topic today in episode 69 is writing or YouTubing about UX and CX if you're new to it. And we even got this question yesterday in office hours, which is, hey, if I'm new to UX, how much should I write or vlog, or what should I be writing or vlogging about? And so after a friendly collision with Jason Grant on the LinkedIn, I thought he might make a super guest to discuss this with us today. So while I set up some of the chat rooms and the screens, Jason, tell everybody who you are.
Thank you very much, Debbie, for having me on this beautiful podcast. I've watched a number of episodes of and really appreciate your thoroughness and completeness of topics. First of all, I really respect and appreciate what you're doing. And I know how much effort it takes to put all this together. So let's just get that on record formally. So who I am is a kind of spiritual question, but what I do is that I have been a UX designer for a very long time. I just actually had to go back to my own LinkedIn profile, which serves as quite a bit of, a backlog of historical record of what I've done. But really formally, I got into UX design, looking at it really at the point of working at Legal in General in 2008. Really, that's when I was really started working as proper UX designer. And that was really prototyping a very complex pension system for Legal in General. It really got me into the depths of UX for B2B systems, enterprise UX. I didn't know at the time that was really what it was. But previous to that, I entered the whole industry as a full stack developer, and then I was a UI developer for a number of years. And my formal education is in computer science and also a master's degree in business management or business information systems, which was back then, this was roughly in 2002. Back then it was kind of like an early precursor to some sort of UX design. And if we talk about tools like rational rows in UML, those were the kind of things that we were using back then to model systems, and the user was represented as a little stick figure. So that's as much as we kind of cared about users. But it's all evolutionary. And since then, I have been both involved and exposed and drawn into the world of both teaching and coaching UX design as I've become more and more senior and lead and head of UX and the guy that puts together the systems and workflows and design ops and things like that. And really having got involved a lot more in service design and even hardware design and ecosystem design, really that all kind of led me also into company transformation and design thinking, coaching workshops, and all those kind of beautiful design sprints and so on. All my life, I've been working for myself as a contractor, freelancer, self-employed person, and I still continue in this kind of funny and testing year for all of us. And yeah, so that's where I'm at and who I'm at. So a mixture of UX designer, coach, teacher, and generally a guy who loves to know anything and everything about UX.
Wow. Okay. Well, it is great to finally meet you after some LinkedIn back and forth. So, look, the topic that we were looking at today had to do with some of the up-and-coming people in UX or the career transitioners, and very often they're hearing from boot campers or other people saying, show your thought leadership. Somehow, even though you're brand new to this industry, they're trying to inspire people to show leadership. I think my first question would be, what is your definition of thought leadership?
Well, thought leadership is one of those phrases that seems to not ever really die out, even though it's quite a nebulous phrase. It sounds fantastic, sounds great, sounds empowering, but actually when we start thinking of it and unpacking it, it kind of doesn't really mean much. It basically, in the purest term, it's thoughts and leadership put together. But I've never been able to think of something and then have somebody follow that thought. I hardly find myself following my own thoughts for most part. So how my thoughts can lead other people, I have no idea. But this is the nature of the kind of funny phrasing. So what is thought leadership? I suppose what they mean by that is I think I have some powerful thoughts, and I think they're worth putting on paper, perhaps even as far as a book. And then I can go around piping up those thoughts again and again and again, and making them seem like they're more important than the next person's thoughts.
Gotcha. And as someone who wrote a book, I do hope I have important thoughts, but not necessarily for thought leadership, more for helping people in their jobs. And I've seen thought leadership defined as the people who are the experts to the experts. And I thought that was an interesting definition, because if that you mean your definition makes sense also, which is kind of, what does this even mean? Why is this a term? And if we were to define it as expert to the experts, then I would say chances are, if you are still up and coming in UX, you're not one of the experts to the experts.
Well, chances are you're not one of the experts to the experts, full stop, because if we follow that definition, then the experts who can guide and teach and advise experts are people who are really on the very, very cutting edge of usually particular stream or particular vertical specificity or speciality. So somebody might be thought leader on perhaps something like wooden flooring, and they might be an expert in that and might be able to advise various manufacturers and sellers of wooden flooring on what kind of wooden flooring is the right thing to have or produce. But with regards to things like UX design, which is such a broad, holistic and generic field, that keeps getting misinterpreted, misrepresented, misthought, implemented. I'm not sure how anyone can be a thought leader. I remember reading a book from Dan Brown called Communicating Design. Perhaps he's one of the guys that I might consider thought leader, but really I would just classify him as my big teacher, really,
Right. Expert, leader.
Yeah.
We don't need new terms for this. So again, when you and I collided, I think it was a post you had put on LinkedIn, and I don't have it in front of me, but we were talking about the idea that there's so many Medium articles and videos out there that appear to be written by people who are quite new to UX, or maybe haven't had their first job yet. They could be in a boot camp now, or studying, or just out, and you seem to have a bit of a reaction to that. So can you tell me, so I'm not putting words in your mouth, can you tell me a little bit about some of your thoughts around, not your thought leadership, but your thoughts around some of those videos and Medium articles that you might have been seeing?
So this seems to be a trend at the moment across a number of industries, where coaches and teachers, really mostly coaches or some sort of consultant types, seem to be giving people a framework that is more like follow it step by step and you will get results, that kind of promise. And what ends up happening is that I end up having a whole bunch of exactly the same messages in my LinkedIn from people who offer me exactly the same thing. And this is completely antithetical to what we actually even advise in UX design. If anything, you're looking to make things that are different but still work. And that's really, really hard, considering that, especially today, so many things are actually relatively well designed compared to if I even enrolled 5-10 years ago. So now it's really hard to actually differentiate and still ensure that things work. So Meanwhile, what the trend seems to be happening is you don't differentiate, you just send out exactly the same message and pitch yourself forward as everyone else does and hope that you are going to get a different kind of result from it other than a blanket no or goodbye or I've seen this before and I know which kind of framework you're just following step by step. And this is happening across marketing, sales, coaching, UX design, and so on, as there is more of this kind of mass-produced frameworks that are supposed to be tick box exercises that produce results, but they don't really.
Great points. Yeah, I feel ya. That's why I was like, get this guy on the show. And some of my thoughts around that were, when I think about some of the YouTube videos I've run into, but especially the Medium articles that I've run into, and I actually have a screen that I can switch to with a little bit of Medium article-ing. And let's see if I can get this running. But basically, if you go to Medium and you search for task analysis mapping, or I think I searched for task analysis paint, you will find literally hundreds of articles because there's a bootcamp out there that says, now that you're learning about task analysis, write a Medium article about it and publish it, telling people what task analysis is and how it's done. And there's literally hundreds of articles on Medium saying task analysis, painting a room. I don't know if you've seen this before. Have you seen like a flood on Medium or YouTube of one particular topic?
I have seen a flood on every channel of one particular topic. Even in fact, what seems to fascinate me quite a bit is what kind of trends do we have this quarter or this month. It's almost like a horoscope. Oh, it's the month of the Virgo, so we talk about task analysis of painting a room, because that's what Virgo month does. I have to sort of be very transparent here that I've in some sense participated in systematizing this process through teaching at General Assembly and similar places which approach it in this way. The problem and the beauty of the industry of UX is that it's not as systematizable as some would like to think it is. And if whatever gets systematized becomes a kind of utility level layer, which becomes in service of the next non-systematized thing. And I'm not sure that anyone really, there's probably a bunch of experts, true experts there that understand even what I just said. But basically, I delivered a talk called this System of Systems for Designing Systems. And in many respects, what I do is I create these meta systems that then lower level designers use to just kind of put together models. It's a bit like the guy who designs the bricks for Lego, right, is creating a whole load of possibilities for other creators to make models, but you'll only make models out of the bricks that I designed. So I'm like the Lego brick designer. And then there's a next level, which is the people who are making the models, preset models. And then there is the next level, which is the people who just follow the instructions and make the exact model that somebody designed here. So this is the system, and this is off systems for designing systems. And so the people who are writing at this level are all making the same model, like a Starship Enterprise. But people here are thinking, oh, what other things can we make out of bricks? And these people here are thinking, what other bricks can we make?
I like that.
And so I'm always thinking, what kind of bricks can we make? And then I'm interested to see what kind of models people come up with those. And then what you end up having is loads of articles or loads of builds of that same model, or bad builds or good builds and so on. But I'm not sure how people make that jump to understand, because I find it that even them understanding that you actually got to design the model itself right? But then there is actually designers who design the rules and kind of roles for how those models can be executed. That is a very tricky shift to make in people. And the further you go into being the brick designer, the more meta you get, and harder you seem to be to understand by these lower level sort of model builders, so to speak. And so that's kind of my ongoing struggle, really, but also fantastic experience, really, to see how the things that I design impact downstream. And I think these articles, I treat them as kind of self-teaching articles. In some sense, there is a kind of truth to the idea that the best way to learn is to teach. So if you can't explain something in a digestible and even entertaining way, you don't really fully understand it. But it's not necessarily the way to self-promote yourself or to really kind of build your own career out of it. It's a sort of throwaway material, I would say. Just like, when we were studying at uni or college, you would write an essay, but that essay wouldn't go out into newspapers, right? It would be something that you kept in your own folder. And if you read it a year or two later, you would kind of laugh away and go like, I didn't even know how to spell half of the words, and grammar is all over the place. And, it's just badly thought through. It's just very kind of shallow material. So that's really what that is.
Wow, that's great. Wonderful stuff. And Jason in the YouTube chat is saying your horoscope analogy is hilarious. And and of course I want to apologize for people. Some of the YouTube URLs we sent out earlier didn't end up being the YouTube URL where this is broadcasting now. So hopefully you've tracked us down through the channel and found us live. So that didn't work, and I apologize. But in looking at this, one thing that occurs to me is, like you said, you wouldn't necessarily have broadcast your uni paper everywhere, especially because it could have accidentally shown a lack of knowledge or a lack of maturity. And when I went through some of these painting a room articles, and I read a few of them some weeks ago when this was pointed out to me by a very smart person, I found that there were some people who said it takes 8 steps to paint a room. And someone else says, here right on our screen, it takes 27 steps to paint a room. And someone else wrote, if you see the screen, I faked my assignment. I love this one. And so I don't know this person, and they might be great at UX or bad at UX. I don't know them. But if you think that people are going to find your Medium articles and maybe they'll help you look like you know what you're doing, or help you get a job, or show some sort of leadership, I'm not sure you want to put up, I faked my assignment. And I'm also thinking that if you want to show the thoroughness of a task analysis, did the people who said painting a room take 8 steps look better or worse than the people who said painting a room is 27 steps? What are your reactions to some of the things that I'm scrolling past here?
Well, again, there are different kinds of content that I actually even tend to engage in. There's content that I have to engage in because maybe I'm getting paid to do so.
Okay.
And, I feel the pain of teachers who have to read the essays from 12-year-olds who hated the process of writing an essay. So I take my metaphysical hat off to all those people who actually enjoy that process over and over and over again. So there's kind of the content I have to read. There is content that I avoid at all costs, like news and sort of gossip and chit chat and temporal, Kim Kardashian has just bought this lipstick or something like that. There is kind of content that I judge very much and kind of look for biases and infomercial type stuff in there. And then there's kind of real content that's super long-term referenceable material, that like books that I really study, books that I study, like people should do Bible studies. If they're Christian, they read Bible every day. There's a bunch of books that I read like that. And because they're always bringing me some new thoughts and new ways of looking at same reality, same tasks, and going, aha, and they're giving me this little ahas. And that's the kind of stuff that is rare. And when you find it, you will kind of like sleep with that book. We used to believe back in the day that if you, like, I hated
Yes.
history and studying history, you put a book under your pillow and maybe you wake up in the morning
Full of
smarter.
history.
Like, yeah. So those books I still sometimes kind of metaphysically put under my pillow and go, maybe some of this will come into my mind with practical, executable fashion. So those Medium articles are more of the kind of stuff I had to write and somebody else had to read, and it's temporal and it's throwaway, disposable. And internet, unfortunately, is full of that. I think that accounts for majority of global warming today. The TikTok videos, the Snapchat videos, the Instagram snaps, stories, all this kind of stuff, disposable content. But it's also a process through which people perhaps may climb some of the ladder to become those writers of books that we want to sleep with under our head with.
Great. I love that idea. I remember that. I'm going to just take a quick break, plugging my company quickly and reminding people to subscribe. So give me half a minute. Be right back. Delta CX, available for CX and UX consulting, projects, and training. Contact us for a free consultation. Well, that wasn't too painful. And of course, I want to remind everybody, even though it doesn't look good on top of me, please subscribe to the Delta CX YouTube channel and ring that bell so that you know when we're live. I go live 2 to 4 times a week, always with fresh content and some interviews. And of course, we also have a Slack workspace. You can join that at no charge. There's over 200 people there, all helping each other out. And that's deltacx.link, which is my URL shortener, /join Slack. And of course, if you like what we're doing on this channel, please teach the algorithm. Write a comment, press the like button, do something, because that's the best way that you can support me nowadays. I read something today, and I wanted to get your opinion of it. I saw something trending on LinkedIn, and it was a couple of bullet points from a new book that's coming out, or that just came out. And the book was about being employable and making yourself more employable. And these were some of the bullet points that are evidently some takeaway ideas from this book. Develop self-confidence was one of the points. Learn continuously. Improve constantly. And be prepared to act fast when an opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that? Does that sound like that's a book someone needed to write? Should have, yeah, I know we haven't read the whole book, so it's hard to judge it, but considering those were the takeaway points that the LinkedIn story focused on, do you get an impression from that?
It is all true, but it's also not actionable easily at all. So developing self-confidence is something that I've actually been on a road of for about 20 years now. I read a book called Ultimate Secrets of Total Self-Confidence, which is a psychological book. It's one of my, what I call jokingly, the Bible, my Bible. But that's one of the books that I study, and I'm very, very familiar with that process of developing self-confidence. And 20 years later, I think I'm about maybe 60%, 70% there. So it's good progress, but it's taken me 20 years. And I've been aware of, what it takes for 20
Plus
years.
self-awareness.
So I think I'm doing extremely well comparatively. But even me, who thinks he's doing extremely well, has taken 20 years. In fact, some of the models in human development, namely I'm talking about spiral dynamics, which is evolution of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, talks about this, that people make shifts through levels of awareness in about sort of decade to 15, 20 years it takes to make a shift. And, sometimes I jokingly say shift happens. Most people don't get the joke, but basically, shift does happen, but the human mind tends to think, oh, I got to write two Medium articles, and I make that 20-year shift. 20 years later, you go look back at your Medium articles and go, what's Medium? Like we used to, like in 20 years, Medium will be like MySpace
Right.
today.
Live journal.
So yeah, and so I saw someone today having like an AOL.com email address, right? So it's like some things just can stick around, for much longer than we thought. I thought AOL died about 6 times over, but some people still access the email then. So but yeah, so it's the wise owl, owl AOL. Yeah, it's that's kind of what's happening, right? It will still take you 10 years. It took me about 5 years to transition from development into early stage UX. Took me another 5 years to really understand what all kind of the building blocks that go into UX process. Back when I was learning, we didn't have all this kind of teachers like yourself, Debbie, and others, and so on. But now things are more complex than they used to be. Back then it was like, if you have a website that's looking decent and works decent, you won. Now
Right.
it's like an app and a website and a whole bunch of wearables, viewables, God knows what, scrollables. I don't even know, like touchable speaking devices, Alexa, all this kind of stuff, mobile things, API interfaces, all that kind of stuff. And so it's a lot more complex than 15 years ago. And so we're now having to think a lot more on that kind of the builders of bricks, as opposed to the put togethers of the models that somebody is giving you instructions for. And that is the big shift that needs to be happening. And it won't happen if you just follow instructions. You're going to have to break some rules. You're going to have to set your own systems up, fail, learn, really get advice from different types of teachers and coaches, listen, be willing to take the pain of that learning. It's like, if your brain is not fried at least twice, 3 times a week, from like, gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing here, you're not really learning. You're not really learning. I've had that for decades of my life. And if anything, I'm kind of like, if I don't have that brain fried feeling, I'm like, I'm stagnating here. Like, I need to be moving forward. I need somebody else to give me that brain fried feeling. So that's really what it takes.
Yeah, I would say that anybody who's looking to create these shifts in themselves, like, again, this bulleted list to me came off a little bit weak and generic, because it was like, develop confidence, learn continuously, improve constantly. And my thought was, yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. That could also be how to make a better pizza. So I thought the advice was extremely generic, but everybody who watches my channel knows I hate that author, and so I don't hate a lot of people, but if they're killing the UX industry, there's some hate there. We're getting some comments in the chat room. People love your jokes, so thanks for that.
I'm not even really started joking, by the way. I'm really pulling back here.
Oh, no, go for it. We're super silly here. Stephanie, friend of the show, Stephanie says, it's a mess to find content about UX methods, because you get Medium articles that are quite content poor, and you get articles by people who are selling tools to UXers, and these rank well.
Well, so there is something to be said about objectification. Okay, that it seems like still today majority of people are into consuming and buying and observing objects. And so if I say to you, oh, I've got a great UX process that I can guide you through, people go, But if I say, oh, I've got a great set of tools for Sketch that implement that process, suddenly people are like, whoa, great. But it's like, you
Can I have a framework, please?
Yeah, exactly. And so so that the latter is an object, the previous one is a kind of concept or an idea, and people are not very good at wanting to subscribe to an idea or buy an idea. And so that's why there's so much objectification. But of course, with so much objectification, most objects are very much the same. It's akin to, you go and you want to buy something like a window cleaning device, and there is 65 different window cleaning devices. They just about all look the same. They do the same thing, and they all claim to be very, very different from every other 64 cleaning devices.
Yeah, I love your points. I love the way you make these points. I can't believe we haven't spoken before. So I found a quote, and I'm going to misquote it because I'm not reading it right now. I'm going to paraphrase it, but I found a quote from someone, and without giving you my reaction to it, I wanted to get your reaction to it. And this person was explaining why at their particular boot camp, not all UX classes are taught by UX experts. That sometimes a UX class might be taught by a recent graduate, or they might be taught by a web developer. And what this person said, and I believe they were like the vice president of the school system, was something like, if you want to learn to tie your shoes, you don't have to find someone who has a PhD in tying shoes. You just have to find someone who already learned to tie their shoes. And that was his explanation for why some of his school's UX classes were being taught by recent graduates. Thoughts?
Well, my thoughts is that if you want to have, okay, I'll give a real world example. I injured my hand, okay, and I cut through this tendon here, and I had to have an operation to saw my tendon back through because I couldn't lift this finger. It's literally the clicking finger, okay? So I couldn't hit all those click me or click here buttons on the internet. And I thought I'd never have that back. Now, the guy who sewed my hand together back up, I really hope that he knew what he was doing and that he's sewn a lot of those kind of tendons back together. Because otherwise, if that was a trainee graduate from whatever the best school is, I'm sure I wouldn't have been able to do this again properly, okay? And so it's not tying shoelaces that we're talking about. We're talking more about like brain surgery equivalent, or at least the tendon surgery on a right hand. And so this is what has been this is the worst trend that we have seen in design happen in the last 5 years, that trivialization of design has happened to such an extent that people have brought design down to something that can be systemically done, as though you can put together a Lego model into instructions into a Lego model, and then you say, I'm a Lego expert. It's
the
like,
framework.
No, you built that one model and you don't really know anything else about Lego, really. Okay, so that's that. But it's also, we have all been through this process where we have been convinced that we know something that we didn't know we didn't know.
Yes.
And at some point we get like, oh God, like I've been harping on this whole story for the last decade, and only now I understand that I've been just an idiot all this time along. But I thought I knew what I was talking about. And, it's just that sort of nature of waking up into higher levels of knowledge and awareness and so on. That's why you see a lot of, mystics and gurus and so on. They don't talk much, because in Taoism, there's that statement of like, those who know don't talk. And I'm aware that we're talking here, but we're trying to explain it to people why that's important.
Yes, we're going to...
The idea is to listen a lot more.
Yeah, because I was just going to say, I saw another quote go by where someone was trying to say it was really good for up-and-coming UX juniors to do a lot of YouTubing and come up with their own channel and podcast and write, because you're going to learn by talking. And my thought was, if your writing or podcasting or whatever is about learning, that sounds interesting, but are you trying to look like a leader and like you've already learned it? Or are you broadcasting in some form to learn? And I think that that's a question some of these people haven't asked themselves yet. Thoughts, reactions?
So yeah, again, I still don't really consider myself a leader in UX. I've done so many like public conference talks. I've taught UX design. I've coached it. I'm running uxcoach.me, which is a whole coaching platform for UX. But I still don't consider myself a leader in true sense. I've led teams. I've set up systems and so on. I don't consider myself a leader because I'm always conscious of the fact that there's lots more that I don't know still. And more I know, more I realize I don't know. And so I'm always looking to learn. And if anything, when I'm speaking about something that I don't know, I'll disclaim it by saying, I'm thought experimenting here. I'm thinking out loud. That's perfectly fine. That's encouraged. That's beautiful. But don't consider me now thought leading you on this or expert
This is not
advice,
the
right?
solution.
Do not listen to, do not do what I'm saying here. I'm just thinking, okay? And this is absolutely perfectly natural process of design, which is also being frowned upon with clients over the last 5 years because they want you to come in as an expert, tell them exactly firsthand what's the right thing to do, implement it pixel perfect visual designs and ship it quickly in preferably like 3 days, 4 days, and charge little money and be perfect. And if you don't do that, you don't know what you're talking about. So the pressure is on from clients to find these ultra high specific, extreme superhuman experts. And nobody ever works like that. Nobody's able to do that. And whoever says they are, they're lying. So yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Quick reminder, we are live. I'm not sure LinkedIn ever told everybody we were live, but we do have a handful of people in YouTube. And of course, this will be archived both on YouTube and on our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. So you can listen there to the audio-only version. And again, please do subscribe and tell the known universe about the Delta CX channel. We've got lots of great stuff coming up the next few weeks. And we are live. So if you guys have any questions, please do ask them. I see Stephanie is saying, well, first, Abby said, I still feel like I'm lacking when I think where I am in UX design after 4 years. Confidence is shaken by each project I work on. Gathering knowledge from correct place is a challenge. So much out there. And Anna P. said, I hear you. I feel the same way at times. And everyone's agreeing. And then Stephanie jumped in and said, I get the feeling the whole graduates can teach come from code boot camps. Maybe that works for JavaScript, and I'm not even sure it does. But for UX design, not sure. Anna P. says, I don't think it's wise to let fresh graduates teach. No matter the field, it just brings the value of the field down, I think. Teachers should be seniors. They have the wisdom to pass down, in my opinion.
So it's important to highlight something here that's very, very influential to this whole process. That education sector there's been many attempts so far to redesign the education sector, and it has been very heavily funded as well. So companies like General Assembly have raised something like over $250 million in funding,
they got acquired,
which is a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
But what they ended up doing is they ended up redelivering education in the same kind of way that you would see it happen really at colleges and so on, perhaps even worse in some cases. But what their pressure has been to actually return that investment to the investors. And the way they have to, the only way they can do that is by either getting acquired or by actually mass marketing the same process to more and more people, which, as we established already, doesn't really work per se, and to actually lower the costs of teaching and coaching. So when they come up to people like yourself and myself, we say, well, I know what I'm talking about, so I want to get paid a certain amount of money. They're like, oh, you're expensive because you're reducing our profit margin. And I say, yeah, but I know what I'm talking about. That's why I'm expensive. And I said, like, well, can you just coach another person and they teach what you know? It's like, well, yeah, if they go through 20 years of experience in 20 hours, yes. But I've never met somebody like that, including
Right. If I could
myself.
do that, I wouldn't give it to General Assembly. I would market it and make a sales funnel.
I coach a Christian priest through a program called Fresh Mind. I coach people on design mind upgrades. And the Christian priest, I say, like, everyone wants to be Jesus today, but nobody wants to carry the cross. There's no shortage of crosses out there to carry, right? But nobody wants to pick them up. It's like, can I just be the kind of enlightened one who walks on water and turns water into wine and fish into 1,000 fish? It's like, yeah, but you got to also carry the cross and die on that cross and resurrect and all that pain. It's like, yeah, not appealing as much. Yeah.
No, and if I can go back to what you said before about General Assembly, when I still lived in San Francisco, I was approached a couple of times by General Assembly as a possible teacher. I auditioned, I think, twice, and both times they claimed they loved me, but they just didn't need me at the time. This is probably 2015 or 2016. And what I found very interesting was how little they paid. And I think we all have to remember that pay can be an obstacle to getting a certain level of talent. And while I am definitely often accused by people who coach me of undercharging, General Assembly was looking to pay, I think at the time it was between $90,000 and $100,000 a year if you taught for a year. It was about 25,000 per class, and you could do 4 in a year. So you'd make about 100K. Well, without naming names or numbers, I was making significantly more than that just working around San Francisco, and especially as a contractor, especially when I got paid hourly, and especially when I was 1099'd right to my corporation. Need I say more? So the hard part was, why would I work for General Assembly for what might be half or a third of what I could make around San Francisco, which is sadly not what I'm making now, but I'll get there. But so the problem is, if you are not willing to pay for that talent level, you don't get that talent level. And then the question is, who do you get? Because the General Assembly program was 9 to 5 all day long, General Assembly can't be my side gig. I've got to quit. I have to make something. I can make something else the side gig, but I have to tell that client, I'm not available to you 9 to 5 Monday to Friday because I'm over in that building making half the money you're paying me. Jason, thoughts?
Well, so basically that goes back to what I was saying about the even though they've raised $250 million, which I still kind of, if I sit and sort of sit in my contemplative meditation, contemplative money meditation, I go like, it's really hard to spend $250 million. It's really, really hard to do that. But, they've utilized that somehow, but I don't see them making a massive, massive wave in a positive direction. What I do see them is making a wave of that, what I sometimes refer to as turbo folk content, right? Which is that kind of disposable stuff. And, a whole load of graduates who frankly, I've heard, recruiting managers say that if someone lists that they've had a GA degree or whatever, qualification, they kind of just get actually put away. They don't get hired specifically because they've been to GA. So,
yes, I've heard of that
kind
too.
of like done like all the wrong things while raising lots and lots of money for it. Whereas what is then happening, and this is kind of like what's been the bastardization of design field and so degradation of it, that people who do actually have decades of experience, scars to prove it. Literally in my case, I've got the scar. All these kind of things, they get kind of hustled for money, right? It's literally the opposite. Like everything's just inverted. Like your pyramid of delta CX is pointing downwards, not upwards, right? And it needs to be pointing upwards for everyone. Like everyone should be better off including the clients that designers work with and so on, because that way we're increasing the size of the pie and everyone gets a piece of a bigger pie. And this is classic sort of management teaching and coaching. But no, it's like the pie is being fought over, and everyone's nibbling over it, and there's less and less of the pie, and everyone's going like, hey, the pie is disappearing, what now? And it's like, well, let's go back to the actual kosher basics of increasing the size of the pie, which means that we all have to really grow, but that's not really what's happening.
No, and I just put up on the screen that Adecco Staffing bought General Assembly 2 years ago for $412 million.
And I'm not really sure how that's ever going to check out as a purchase. I'm not sure what the thinking is. Like, it's beyond me. And I'm even writing a whole book called Designed Company to debunk all of this, because we've seen it with WeWork. WeWork has gone from something like 49 billion or 24 billion estimate to 2 billion estimate.
And that was mostly the real estate.
Exactly, real estate that they don't own,
right?
And there's so many of there's the Fire Festival was a great example of marketing with no product.
Right.
Somebody wrote an article
Vaporware.
at some point somebody wrote an article called, I thought I was hired here to put lipstick on the pig, and then I realized there is no pig. Like that was Fire Festival, no pig. There's the Theranos, there's all this kind of stuff, basically massive kind of scam jobs, vaporware, as you said, that kind of promise the world and deliver sort of little chicken nuggets, and so that has got to stop at some point, and the reality has got to start actually guiding the world
and ethics
forward.
Ethics should be guiding.
Exactly.
Yeah. So getting back to the topic hanging above our heads, let me ask you this. If you had someone who was new to UX, transitioning into the career, maybe still learning, still studying, but I mean still learning as in they're in year one, not you and I still learning, because we're always still learning, but someone super new to the industry and they think that they need to stand out by writing, by YouTubing, by streaming, by one of these things, what kinds of advice would you give that person about that writing and broadcasting?
There are lots of things that are worth potentially writing about and documenting, and those things you can actually work on making happen. So, for example, still today, I go to design jams, to hackathons, to all sorts of conferences that are completely free. They don't pay me. They might have some sort of sushi at the place or some sort of bunch of stickers that I always collect like a handful of because my children love stickers. And I go like, hey guys, we got loads of stickers. So they're like, oh, and oftentimes they look at it, it's like, these are not quite that great. I was like, come on, just use them somewhere. It's like, even they got like become sticklers for stickers. Go
ahead.
So you can attend these kind of events and really kind of get your teeth into those kind of projects that will give you that kind of brain, there you go, brain stickers. Kind of burnout in a sense, right? The good kind of sense of, oh God, there's a lot to this that I both can think about and learn and discuss with other people and learn directly from and then pitch and so on, and surely someone's going to record it. Nowadays everything is kind of recorded on video and whatever written about, and that becomes a lot more of a track record worthy thing than just kind of your internal essay that you're writing for yourself or that somebody set for you and then that you're publishing. In fact, I wanted to say this, that I actually consider myself every couple of years completely a noob in what I'm doing. In fact, that helps me keep myself moving forward, because there's that saying that says you're only as good as your last football game in sort of football management or whatever. And it's like the stuff that I was doing 3-4 years ago is either kind of become obsolete, or now I look back and go like, that requires update now because the cycles have become lots shorter and smaller. where it used to be like 10 years to redesign a website. Now it's 5 years, then 2 years, whatever. So even stuff that I did 3 or 4 years ago is already kind of quite outdated. So I'm having to think of myself, what do I really want to put out there, and how do I want to kind of keep climbing the ladder and, push myself forward. And so I'm really having to delete things that I'm actually emotionally attached to, that I put a lot of life energy into, but are kind of now obsolete. I'm kind of going, delete or hide, from my profile, right? Or, just kind of archive, right? Put it on an external hard drive. That's where it really belongs. It's some sort of like library material. Yeah. And so that's really what the constant process ought to be. And you can run that process on the basis of even like monthly or certainly quarterly. What have I done this quarter that's worthy of really publishing? And what is the material that I can really publish for years to come consistently? And this is what I really appreciate about you, Debbie, that, we're on this episode 69 here, which is very sort of sexy number,
Thanks, JV504.
So 69 episodes of consistent material about UX and sticking to topics, which we're trying to do here, right, is like a massive achievement.
Thank you.
And I'm sure you're going to get to 169 and 1169, and so on. But who's got the endurance to run that marathon? Although we're talking agile about sprinting, really overall it's a marathon. Okay, so don't burn yourself out and thinking, oh, I haven't got something worthy thought leadership to post on Medium. Well, because you're not a thought leader, and that's fine. The world still, the earth goes around still, and it's a ball, it's not flat earth, and that's fine. And you can be a junior, mid-level designer and write about your failures. Write about failures. That's fine if you want to. But you don't have to publish everything, for God's sake. Like, curate your materials. And if anything, I'm finding myself more kind of deleting things as opposed to creating more. No.
Yeah, I've got a lot of drafts in Medium that might never see the light of day, because sometimes I write something and I'll sit on it for days or weeks, and I'll come back to it later and I'll go, well, that really had no value. Or there's a draft I have sitting in Medium from January, and it was going to be about the importance of remote work. And boy, did I think that was going to be an exciting new topic.
Quick one.
And wow, I could talk about remote work back in January. Ooh, no one's talking about that, right? And I had started writing this thing about how important, what if people got sick and had to stay home? What about your people with accessibility needs and disability needs? We should let them stay home and work from home if they want to. And I'm glad I didn't publish it, because now it would look, first of all, it'd be lost in a sea of remote working articles. Second of all, it might end up sounding tone deaf in the scheme of the pandemic. And so I tell people, if you really want to write something, don't be afraid to sit on it for days or weeks and make sure that you come back to it later and go, yes, when I say this, it's going to help somebody.
Debbie, you've just prodded me on my absolutely most painful spot. And I'll tell you why. Because my master's degree thesis in 2002 was managing virtual teams in completely virtual environments.
Love it.
And I was being taught that whole module and what was called team communication, which is a whole module at a master's degree. And we covered it for 3 months. And it was like, I just realized, oh my God, I have no idea about any of this stuff. Then I ended up writing a whole thesis on this and running a virtual system for a year that I coded up myself in 2002. So this is almost 20 years ago.
Right.
And I've been a proponent of virtual teamwork for 20 years now. And then suddenly COVID hits, and suddenly everyone is overnight an expert on virtual team working, right? And it's like, we have said it in January this year, or it's like, guys, I've been literally harping on about this for 20 years and nobody listens. How many corporations have told me in my face, you think we can work virtually, But in this particular company, we can't, because the work that we do is not possible to be done virtually. And I look at it just kind of blankly and go like, you have no idea what you're talking about. I can prove this, but you don't even let me prove it to you. And now suddenly I was like, we'll work virtually. It's like,
Congratulations.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I started working remotely in 1995, and so I'm not impressed with any of this, and so I know it's new to many people, but you and me, not new, and so I think because we only have a few minutes left, believe it or not, we've almost gone an hour, because we have a few minutes left, I would say that my advice to people at any level, at anything, if you're going to write something, if you're going to broadcast something, there's a couple of things to remember. Number one, the internet seems to be forever. You forget that people can download a YouTube video that you later erase. They can screenshot the tweet that you later delete. They can make a PDF of the article that you later unpublish. So slow down. Make sure you really want this stuff out there, because you might not be able to take it back as much as you might hope. And number two, my belief is there's no reason to put anything out there that doesn't deeply help other people. If it's just you bragging about yourself and look at me and what I did and I got this many followers and I did this, how does that help anybody else? And so I usually don't get caught up in that. I usually am not posting to LinkedIn, hooray for me, I have 1,000 whatevers. Not my style, because if I start typing that because I'm excited, then I go, who does this help? How does this help someone else? It doesn't. It serves my ego, and it doesn't help others. Why should I post that?
Yeah, and actually also the reverse of that, or some sort of complementary statement around that, is that actually nobody really cares, right? So the content that you put out there should be content that at least somebody cares about, and that content is going to be some sort of value adding, well thought through content, not a kind of copy and paste and regurg of what somebody else has written about. You can write about that. It's a sort of like a diary entry for your own personal use. You can reflect on it. That's super useful to you and your ego development in a healthy way. But it's not something that I need in my inbox feed or, alerts or notifications and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I would certainly agree. So knowing that we just have a few minutes left, let's give you a little bit of time to plug whatever you're up to and let everybody know how they can find you and follow you and connect with you. Where do we find you in the media world?
Sure. So there's a few things that I do actually, and all related to design. So my personal website is jasongrant.in, and that lends itself quite nicely to creating subsections in UX, in speaking, in psychology, and so on. So we've got all those sections there. I coach UX design through uxcoach.me. I'm writing a book called Designed Company, taking all the best practices from design thinking and UX design to the company level and designing it all together. And that's designed.company. You can get a free book, actually free ebook there once I've written it fully, sort of halfway through. So I'll give you a free ebook if you put yourself on the mailing list there. And my company is integral with the mission of redesigning humanity, and we do that on the individual level as well as systemic level. So yeah, there you go.
Excellent. Find this person everywhere. Find him on LinkedIn. Are you a tweeting guy? Should people be following you on the tweeting?
Yes, so on jasongrant.in, you've got all my contacts there, all social media, YouTube, WhatsApp, everything. I'm completely open to take questions from anyone and completely welcoming of any positive and negative remarks, anything you can. If you dare to send me a message, you are ahead of 99% of people out there.
There you go. Excellent. Well, wow, this hour really flew. It was a wonderful conversation and had a fantastic depth to it that I wasn't expecting. So thank you for bringing it up in that sense. So thanks very much to Jason. And gosh, that wraps us up for today. Let me just check the calendar quickly so I can tell everybody what else is coming up on the program. That is it for this week. Please join Monday to learn more about what DevOps is, because if we want people to know what UX is, we should know what the heck they do. Tuesday, of course, will be Office Hours Ask Me Anything. Wednesday will be a panel talking about startups, successes, failures, and warnings. So those of you who have startups, work at them, or are thinking of having one, that could be a good panel for you. And definitely set your calendars for Wednesday, September 3rd. We're going to have Andy Foote on to talk about your personal brand and how to best express that on LinkedIn. And he knows everything about the LinkedIn algorithm. So we're definitely going to learn some interesting things there. But combine that with this podcast and don't post crap that nobody cares about. Well, on that note, Jason, thank you again so much. Everybody,
thank you so much.
Find him, write to him, follow him. And on that note, I will play us out of here. Be well, everybody. Bye.
Take care. Yep.
Thanks for watching. Delta CX is available for consulting and projects related to CX and UX strategy, leadership, training, problem finding, problem solving, and innovation. Learn more at deltacx.com.